Welcome in, Falcons fans. Your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for more Atlanta Falcons content. And I got another special guest with me today, obviously, to talk about the Falcons. You see him on social a little bit, you see him. Bro Talk is the name. He does, he does breakdowns of the Falcons games after them. Do great analysis, by the way. Appreciated all that. I didn't know, some of you may know it's the real name, Kevin. Simple, but gets the job done. I appreciate you, Kevin, for coming on to the show. And how are you doing today, man?
Hey, Bryce, like I said before the show, thank you for having me. Nice to meet you. And I'm doing great. It's a great time to talk Falcons football. It's been, I think, 7 years before we're in week, 6, 7, and we can talk positively and not already think to next year. So that's nice.
That's definitely a big change with this year's team. And I think with that has came a change of expectations. But before we get into that, we got to talk about the game that just happened, the Carolina Panthers. I called that game a throwback game for the Falcons, running the football, not the prettiest game in the world, but you get the job done, run the football, you score 30-plus points, which is in back-to-back weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Never happened under Arthur Smith. Just quick first impressions after the game. How big was that to get back to winning a game that way and just showing you can win in different ways?
I think it was huge. It boosts not only the team's confidence, but the fans' confidence in the team. And that's something Arthur Blank and Raheem have been trying to build up since the offseason when, Raheem was first hired. And to see that old school football, the style of football that you mentioned Arthur Smith wanted was executed because the creativity was seen in the film, in the running game. The passing game has been effective, but it was really, really nice to see not just one of the running backs get it done, but the RB1A, RB1B, we talk about them, Robinson and Algier, how we want Algier to be in that mix. And it finally came to fruition and they were both effective. It was so fun. It was probably the most relaxed I've been watching a game. Maybe not initially because we had some early mistakes, but once it started going, and then especially after Algier's, angry run, man's got himself the scepter on Good Morning Football. And I can't say enough good things. The running game was so fun to see once again.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was just, like I said, it was big, especially because the running game had been in some flux. I think people were talking about the type of runs that were being called. Was it most effective? What they were doing? Obviously, Arthur Smith ran more of a power zone running scheme, offensive line really shooting off the ball. And we saw the effectiveness this year. Obviously, Zach's introducing a new type of offense. And, outside of the Eagles game, this was the other game that we could say we've had a very strong running attack. So from that perspective, did you see something different in the way they were calling runs? I figured maybe they're running more just zone straight, offensive line can blast off the ball instead of more zone, hey, get outside and try to find a hole to cut into. Or are you seeing something different?
So I am seeing something different. And I tweeted out, what game was it? It was after a win, and I think it was against either the Aints or the Bucks. I can't remember. And we saw a lot of outside zone. And I put out that Dwayne Ledford, our offensive line coach, he's done a phenomenal job with the offensive line, but he's the run game coordinator. And I got some clarification because I got a little bit of pushback on what I said. But from what I gathered from, people with more knowledge than me is the run game coordinator comes up with the scheme. It's the offensive coordinator's job to then call the plays. So it seemed like Dwayne Ledford was kind of sticking to that outside zone scheme that Arthur Smith had implemented and was effective, but we need creativity. And that's what we saw. So it wasn't just outside zone. We saw that. We saw inside zone. That's the one where you're talking about. The offensive linemen take a step to the left, to the right. They double team, they move up, and it's flowing. And it makes it so much easier, especially for someone like Tyler Algier, who can see that cutback lane very quickly and make that decision versus someone like Bijan. I understand why you want outside zone for Bijan, but he's effective too. And he ran a lot of inside zone at Texas with Sark calling the plays. But I also, not just inside and outside zone, you saw a split zone. For those of you not familiar, that's where you usually see Charlie Werner or Kyle Pitts, even Drake London, that cuts across and hits the end. It's similar to an inside-outside zone where you're trying to hit that B gap, that BC gap, whichever one it is, or you have that cutback. Also, the pin and pull with creative, not just with Jake Matt. You saw it on Bijan's second touchdown. I think I called it out. You saw Jake Matthews pull, and you saw Drake pin, right? The third touchdown we got, where Bijan almost got his hat trick, you saw the similar thing. Instead of it being Jake Matthews, it was Charlie Werner that was pulling, still Drake pinning, but then you also had Tyler Algier as the lead back. So it's using different personnel. It's a similar type run, whatever scheme you're doing, but it's showing the defense different looks, and it keeps them on their heels. And that's why I think Carolina's Carolina, but still you have to execute in order for these things to actually work. And, it's week 6, week 7, things they're clicking.
Yeah. And that's definitely what we need. And it was interesting. I don't know what day of the Pat McAfee show it was, but they were talking about one of the runs that the Falcons had. Usually you see them, like sometimes when you have a guy pulling, you'll see them, get the outside guy, the end technique, that guy, the defensive end. And they said on this clip, what's different is what the Falcons did was they went after the 3 technique. They went after the defensive tackle. And a lot of teams don't do that. And so they said, don't be surprised if teams start trying to copy that, because it helps create what you said, maybe the inside zone. Hey, we take the 3 technique out and we're able to get a hole right there and create massive holes for guys like Bijan and Tyler that can create positive plays. And so it's good. I've noticed through these weeks with Zach in this offense, as they're figuring it out, they seem to implement new things week to week that I think keeps the offense different, but also I think that's learning the personnel. I mean, especially I've mentioned before that when they go regular tempo, and then they do like no huddle, they'll make a play. Okay, no huddle. We're going to keep pushing the pressure, but it seems like they're doing it in very timely moments. Have you seen that kind of in the evolution of the offense through these first 6 games of just, we maybe there's a week, this wasn't the best game plan, but, you see correction, you see improvement from Zach in what they're trying to do offensively, and just also from an execution standpoint with the team?
Oh, absolutely. You see it week after week. I mean, who was it that said it? Someone in a press conference said it. Week 1 feels like an eternity ago. And everyone knew it would be a learning curve, but we didn't expect it to be that big. But now we're in week 7, and everyone is executing, from Zach Robinson to Kirk Cousins to all the new personnel that we have. And then just like you said, I feel like Zach is such a, he's a former quarterback, played at Oklahoma State. I believe he was in the league for a couple of years, but didn't really see the field. But those are the best types of coordinators because they're studying the game so much. And to your point, that one play that Pat McAfee brought up, even Dan Orlovsky brought up, it's catching media waves, national media waves, it's a similar style run that Sean McVay had implemented that kind of changed the game. Well, Zach Robinson, evolved it to the 3 technique. It's almost like a trap play in a zone scheme. And yes, I think I could 100% see a lot of teams copy it. But again, the execution from the, it doesn't matter who it is. Even Kyle Pitts, I was hard on Kyle Pitts the first couple of weeks on his execution, his effort. It's improved. You can see it from week 1, his blocking. That's the biggest gripe he had, to week 6. It's improved drastically. And now I think today in the presser, they talked about Drake on how he transitioned from the X receiver to the Z receiver, and how Roddy did that same transition, and his career kind of took off even more. That's the type of things you want in an offensive coordinator, and Zach is seeing and learning, whereas Arthur Smith was so hard-headed. We saw it for 3 years. Drake is our X. That's what he's going to be, versus, what if I plugged in Drake at the Z or the slot? What would that do for him? It's created so many openings. He's on pace, for his first 1,000-yard season and double-digit touchdowns? I mean, granted, he has Kirk Cousins. That helps. But at the same time, an offensive coordinator has to help his players out succeed. So, yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, definitely, man. So, I mean, it's just some really good stuff to take out of that game. Now, we have to talk about some of the negative. Obviously, one of the big things a lot of people are talking about is the pass rush. I believe the Falcons had one of their higher pass rush pressure percentages out of this game, but they obviously could not actually get to Andy Dalton. I know one play with Lorenzo Carter was the one that made everybody say, get him off this team immediately. But when you've looked at the film week to week, I've made mention, like I know people like Art Ebiketie hasn't had a sack yet, I believe, this season, but he's been close on some. I remember a couple, but obviously it's almost like this entire defensive line is like Coy Bierman. I don't know if you remember.
I remember crying.
They always say almost there, but he never gets there.
Right.
And I don't know if that's affecting Matthew Judon. I don't know what you're seeing from him. Is he? Because I feel like too, he gets held a lot of plays, but they're not going to call it. I definitely feel like Judon gets held because offenses know this is really the only guy we got to worry about. So let's hold him a little bit. You know what I'm saying? To see if we can get away with it. What do you like? Is it just guys are not winning their matchups? Is there something different? Because I've also said, Ebiketie had like 6 sacks or 5 sacks last year. Abimata was active. Brady, before he got hurt, was active. Guys were getting pressure. Now they can't. Has something changed with the defensive linemen? Have they been asked to do something different? Or is it just one of those times they're just not getting there?
So I think it's a part of both. It's a new defensive scheme going from Ryan Nielsen. They spent that year learning that defensive scheme. Well, one and done for Nielsen. Now he's in Jacksonville. And then you bring in Raheem and Jimmy Lake, who are implementing a Fangio-style defense. So it's a lot more stunts. It's a lot more simulated pressure. So you're going to see a lot of like Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata drop into coverage that usually gets the fans up in arms. Like, why are they in coverage? Was to confuse the offensive line. The thing about it is yes, they are not winning their ones. Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata typically can win inside against backup linemen. From what I'm seeing, is they're struggling to just separate from them. As far as Judon goes, he's never been a speed guy. He's been more of a power guy that takes advantage of opportunity on stunts. And I think partially that's why we went and got him, because he fit the style of defense that Raheem and Jimmy Lake wanted to run. As far as winning one-on-ones, he does win, but he gets held, like you said, a lot. And I complain about it all the time. I don't like to complain about the refs, but it's like, come on, throw me a bone or something, because they're going to keep doing it until you call it, right? Until you call it, then he can't really take advantage. As far as Arnold Ebiketie, a lot of people are falling off the train. I was one of the people that really had high expectations this season. I'm kind of falling off the train. I haven't given up on him just yet. Lorenzo Carter comes up on the concussion protocol today. Okay. Is he going to play? I don't want to say I hope not, because he does do his job, right? To an extent. It was just very frustrating to see him not bring down Andy. But getting Ebiketie with an uptick in snaps, okay, let's get a fuller picture of what you can do, because you're supposed to be that speed, handsy, kind of like a Chop Robinson, maybe not as quick as Chop Robinson style Penn State guy, but you still are supposed to be able to win against those slower, bigger offensive tackles. That's why you were drafted in the second round. I still think this team needs to go after an alpha. And who are we talking about? The big names, right? Myles Garrett, it's a dream. Likely? No. Max Crosby, even less likely. Micah Parsons is probably the best bet, but you have Jerry Jones, who's a stubborn GM, who's not going to give him up because he's Jerry Jones, right? He threatened to fire a reporter or a talk show radio host in Dallas. That was crazy. Anyways, so the most realistic people are like a Zadarius Smith, a Sam Hubbard, who are that they bring an attitude. I always liked Zadarius Smith when he left Baltimore, when he left Green Bay. I've always advocated for this team to go get him, and now we have a real opportunity. He's past that age of 30. Everyone always like, oh, he's over 30. He's still got that dog in him, and maybe he doesn't get you double-digit sacks. Well, guess what? That takes less attention off everyone else. If you have that alpha out there, that guy that can get to the quarterback. Now you put in your pass rush package, Grady, if you want to send Caden, Zadarius, Judon, like that creates more opportunities for everyone to get a sack. Unfortunately, it's not just the pass rush that's killing us. It's the run game too. And it sucks because this team invested so much on that front and it's not coming to fruition. Like I'm sure Raheem expected it. He didn't expect to be the top. Right? He doesn't have Aaron Donald on that line, but I think he expected more, and it's just not like I said, coming to fruition. So I know it's frustrating to him and all the fans. I'm looking at you, fans. Don't think that Terry and Raheem aren't trying. It may not be that name that you don't want, but they're trying. They're trying to secure the future as well, not give up the future, right? We drafted our future this year, so they want to keep that future as well to continue to add pieces, young pieces. So yes, unless you can land a Myles Garrett or a Micah Parsons, don't expect that big name.
Yeah, I think too. What's interesting about it too is we've seen all type of hypothetical trades. There was one that even said, "What if we send Penix for?" And everybody was like, "Oh my god." And one thing I always like to remind people of about this regime is that they have been a regime who likes to try to keep some assets at their disposal at all times every year. So the aggressive get rid of the picks thing, it's just I never saw that as feasible for them because even though they're trying to win now, they're also looking at, okay, well, Penix is going to be the quarterback in 2 years. We don't want to just have we have to not re-sign guys or money because guys get paid, guys you got to extend. You don't want to just all right, well, we can't really improve through the draft, and we already have high-priced players that we have to pay because we wanted to win now, and maybe they're getting a little older or a little, things happen. You have a window when you make moves like that. So I think they're always trying to be like, how can we improve but not get mortgage the future? And sometimes that frustrates fans because, when you feel like, especially with some fans feeling like we can compete, NFC's wide open, we got it, we can do it. I think some people are just like, let's just screw it, let's just do it. And they're like, whoa, listen, we want to win just as much as you guys, but we don't want to just say screw it, but we want to figure out how can we improve.
How can you win consistently?
Also, exactly, trying to have consistent winning because that's the big thing. You win now, you only have a window, and then you got to go through a down year. And then we're going to hate that year and go through everything under the sun. But if you can build consistent winning, that can work. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the biggest piece or team that you can look at is our division rival, the Aints. They are in absolute cap hell, right? They're giving away assets and it's not working. They're getting older. Their fandom is through the roof. They were that team that went all in because they thought they had that window. Well, it's been how many years since Drew Brees retired? And they're still paying for the repercussions of going all in. People forget that aspect. Now, another thing people forget, unless you have that true alpha dog that you find in the first round, a lot of these kids have to develop, right? Laiatu Latu, Dallas Turner, Gerard Verse, those were all the names linked to the Falcons before the Penix pick happened. Through 6 games, they each only have 1 sack. What would the fandom be thinking then? That's a lot of pressure for a rookie, a first-round rookie. They had that pressure. Okay, I got taken in the first round. I got to produce. Well, think about this. What does that happen to their mental? Because it's as much mental as it is physical. Because if in anything you do in life, if you tell yourself, I can't get this done, well, guess what? You're not going to get it done. And bringing in someone like Zadarius Smith, who still has 2 years left on his deal, so he'd be back next year. I want them to extend Judon for at least 2 years. You bring in that first round or second round rookie, let them learn from these guys that were elite pass rushers in their youth that can teach them. What's that?
And you get Braylon Trice back next year.
And you get Braylon Trice, right, who's been probably in the study room learning from Judon already, these veteran guys. So he's having a year of just learning while the rest of his body recovers from, his season-ending injury, and he's just building his confidence. Okay, I'm seeing the game. I can do this. I can beat that guy. I can beat him. And you bring in another guy in the first round, and you do that. It's a developmental thing, and that's why I'm happy, right? I wasn't happy in the moment when they drafted Penix, right? But it's a learning curve. And a lot of these rookies, it just happened to be this draft class was one of the best draft classes where you can throw them out there. But look at what class was it? The 2020 draft class, where it's just besides Trevor Lawrence, they were all duds and they were all expected to perform right away. Could it have been different if they developed? Maybe. We don't know. A lot of expectations thrown at a kid, 19, 20 years old, playing up against men, grown men, 27, 28 years old, who are developed further along. A lot of people don't think about that aspect, but it can get better. I know in my heart, and I get a lot of hate my way because I'm not as harsh as some of these other creators. That's just not my style. I'm very optimistic thinking, and I wholeheartedly think Terry is working the phones to get something done. It's just not going to be the name people want.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, I mean, listen, I think the trade deadline is what, 2 weeks? Next week? I think
November 5th. So yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay. So they have some time. They're obviously going to try to make some things happen. Now, during that time, they obviously have I think a pretty important game coming up on Sunday against Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks have lost a couple, kind of desperate for a win right now, trying to get back on track. From what I've observed with this team, a lot of it offensively falls on Geno Smith. He has to do a lot to kind of keep this team afloat. I saw the right guard, I think, is the worst in the league.
Right tackle.
Did
you see that viral video?
He was the right tackle. The right side isn't good, but the right tackle, I think, is they said is the worst one in the league. So that's something. But they say Geno has to do a lot. But they have talent. DK Metcalf, Kenneth Walker. They're a good team. It's just, like I said, they've had some tough games. So this game could go either way. I think the Falcons are favored by 3 points if you're into that. So that's usually just home field points. Mm-hmm. So what is your thoughts coming into this game in that matchup against Seattle?
So from a coaching standpoint, the right side is weak, right? And it's in a sense, I'm not saying the Falcons are bad, but it's bad versus bad, right? We have a bad rushing defense. They have a bad rushing offense, which is going to give, right? Typically, if a coach can take advantage of those weaknesses like the right side, because I saw the same thing when I was setting up on the Seahawks. I was like, dude, I know it's Nick Bosa, but that's bad. Like, you're not even putting up a fight, and Geno Smith is running for his life, and Kenneth Walker gets no running lanes. If Kenneth Walker wasn't a freak of nature athlete that he is, that they would be bottom of the league when it comes to rushing attacks. So which is going to give that's going to fall heavily on Raheem and Jimmy Lake to come up with the game plan. And we're all hopeful for Troy to come back. I don't think he'll be back in time, but Nate Landman first came back a little shaky. He was graded high, but looking at the film, I think he was overgraded. I think he'll be better and back. But then also it's like, okay, can you take advantage and overload that right side for pressure? Because Geno is very good at navigating the pocket now. He's able to just make that one step to give himself that extra second to throw the ball to Tyler Lockett, JSN, DK. It doesn't matter. We know our safeties will do their job, not giving up that big play. The middle of the field is where we struggle in the passing game. And DK has that breakaway speed. So does JSN. Tyler Lockett, he goes down when he catches the ball, so he's not really a threat there. But defensively, the bend don't break style, right? It's a lot of bend. Can they hold them enough? Because defensively for the Seahawks, they're going to be good in the future. It's just I don't think their talent is there all across the board. They have studs at corners. But I know Zach Robinson can scheme around that and get openings for Mooney, London, whoever. Their linebackers aren't as strong as they have been in the past. And if their defensive line is still, banged up, which a lot of their starters have missed, and I think they're going to miss this game, is the way it's trending. You take advantage of the run game once again. You run it down their throat, and you let Kirk Cousins pick apart that defense in the play action. I think this game is winnable by more than 3 points. It's just going to fall on the coaching and what their preparation looks like and planning.
And the one thing about this team, too, is they've done a great job at halftime making adjustments. We have to give credit to that. They've made great halftime adjustments, which has helped them in these games. And I think for the Seattle game, can you go a little bit into the matchup of our secondary against their receivers? I mean, Seattle has a very talented group of receivers. I know some people gotten on AJ, everybody first half, Deontay Johnson. He's not a bad receiver, but, he got a touchdown caught on him. Everybody's like, get that bum off my team. And then he gets the interception. All right, bring him back to the team. So, it's one of those things where I think, people have said what he's done with never really having an elite pass rush as a defensive line in front of him has, honestly, you have to take that into consideration. But Mike Hughes has been better than I think a lot of people expected. People were panicking before the year. Now, like, oh, yeah, I'm fine with Mike. And obviously, what the safeties can do. Can you just talk about that matchup? Because obviously, there's some tough matchups for that Falcons secondary to go against this year. I mean, to go against in this week. And it'll be a bit of a test, I would say, as well.
So for the matchup, a lot of people get on to AJ because there's one particular person I see on there that he's not that alpha, he's not that corner that follows their number one receiver. Well, if you think about it realistically, the Seahawks have 3 number one receivers, and JSN just happens to land in the slot. In this defensive scheme, a lot of people, it's cover 3, whether it's quarter halves or a single safety in the middle and the 2 corners drop. You're going to give that cushion. You're going to give that leverage because you're enticing the quarterback to throw it in a certain spot, because as long as the linebackers don't bite on the play action, that's where the corners get hurt. And of course, that's when everyone points at the corners. Oh, AJ's giving up the big play. D. Alfred's giving up the big play, et cetera, et cetera. These guys have a scheme that they have to follow. I will say, though, matchup-wise, I think we can match them. I'd like to see Clark Phillips on the field more. I think D. Alfred does a great job from what I've seen, and I put out a theory. Mike Hughes is on a contract year, and yes, he has played well. I think he's going to get paid, but not by us. I think Clark Phillips has been developing in this scheme, learning it with, Jerry Gray, Jimmy Lake, Raheem, all these DB coaches that we brought in, and he's going to be that full-time starter. Because I don't know if you've noticed, towards the second half of the game, even if it's a close game, he's coming in and playing that outside corner spot. What I would like to see I understand development, but we want to win games, right? And D. Alfred has played well. I'd like to see them more, maybe Terrell moving into that slot in our nickel package, and then putting Clark and Hughes on the outside, because it allows more freedom for AJ versus him having to worry about, what his zone is. He can key in on the quarterback side because he has, depending on the alignment, he has assignments, right? But generally the nickel corner has a little bit more freedom in moving around, trying to make a play, and then the ability to run up. For those of you football nerds, go to, I think it was the 2023 season. Yeah, just last year when Raheem was the defensive coordinator for the Rams, watch where Jalen Ramsey is in their nickel package. He's in that nickel slot. He's an outside corner. Why is he playing the nickel? Because Jalen Ramsey has playmaking ability, and they want to give him that freedom to make those plays. I'm not saying AJ's at Jalen's level, but it allows him a little bit more freedom to play the game, to play football, to play with his instincts, because he's got good instincts. His knack is he can't catch the ball. That's his knack. So, but I think it's going to be a tough matchup. It's going to be a good matchup, and like you said, with no pass rush, a receiver is bound to get open.
Yeah, and hopefully it won't be too bad of a situation. Because I feel like this game could obviously be competitive down to the end, depending. Seattle's been competitive in all their games outside of maybe Detroit, and even in that game they fought back. It's just injuries and so on and so forth. So they're a team that's going to be gritty for sure. Going back to the offense though, looking at Kirk and how he's progressed. Obviously, he had the breakout game against Tampa. Last week, the passing game didn't start off great. It seemed like they were in a weird start for them. Obviously, that could just be, he talked about maybe we were given too many pats on the back after the Tampa Bay game, and, maybe coming into a game, especially against a team that you're expected to beat, how that can maybe impact you. You're coming off an emotional high and you're going against a bad team. That maybe isn't the best recipe for continued success. Can you just talk about his growth within the season? I know obviously beginning of the year, we remember people were questioning, is he healthy? Is he good to go? Blah, blah, blah. I remember after the Tampa game, he was like, honestly, I got my anticipation back. I felt like I could anticipate things again and just get myself back where I needed to be, because that's part of the process of growth. Can you just talk about like him and what, his importance to the offense's bid, just getting himself back where he needs to be, and then how that's allowing guys like Drake London to have the year he's having. Darnell Mooney, we know what he's been doing. Even Kyle Pitts, having 2 consecutive games with 70+ yards, hasn't done that since his rookie year. So, he's doing what we wanted him to come in and do for our weapons on the offense.
Yeah. So I think part of it is his inner self, is my leg actually good to go? I don't know if anyone's had, major sports injuries. I never had an injury like Kirk myself when I was playing sports, but you always have that hesitation initially. Game speed, practice is practice, right? You want to say it's game speed, but it's really not. It's really not. And once Kirk hit that breakout, and I really think it was not the Tampa game, but more so the Kansas City game, where he really looked like he was driving off that foot. He was moving a little bit better. He starts worrying less about himself, and he worries about everyone else. And Kirk is a natural leader. For those of you that haven't seen the Quarterbacks documentary, I highly recommend you do so to give you an inside look of who Kirk is as a person. And, that helps all these young guys, because then he tells them what he sees, and kind of like Matt Ryan, where he gets their input. What are you seeing? But one of the things with Kirk is, and he puts on, he's Kirk on the mic, but when it comes to football, he's a completely different person. Like a lot of these guys are in the pros, is, yes, I want to hear what you have to see, but this is what they're doing, and this is where I need you to be in this exact moment. If they're in this front, if you see this, do this. If you see that, do this. And the guys are buying in, like, oh my God, like he's right. If I do my hitch right here or break at this yard mark, there's a window, and the ball's already on its way to me. So sometimes if you ever watch other quarterbacks play where you're like, where the heck was he throwing it? He was throwing it in a spot he was expecting his receiver to be. And Kirk and the receivers are getting in sync. The biggest one that we saw was that Tampa game where Darnell Mooney hadn't turned around and the ball was almost to him and it hit him in the chest. And he knows he should have caught that. But that's the type of stuff, anticipation and great anticipation that Kirk has, that you saw on the film when he was playing with Minnesota. It's like, why is he throwing it? And then the play happens and you're like, oh, that window wasn't there when he threw it, but he knew it was going to be there. And that comes with his experience, his age, and his confidence in Zach Robinson's offense. So it's going to get, I'm not saying he's not going to have bad games, because everyone has bad games.
Yep.
It's to be expected. When you say there's going to be no bad games, you're setting yourself up for failure. But there's going to be more good and great versus bad. And that's what makes things exciting to be a Falcons fan.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think they said he had I don't remember the exact number, but they said he threw a certain number of they labeled them aggressive throws. And I feel like he's been throwing a lot of aggressive throws recently, which is just showing, like I said, the anticipation, the trust, and just getting that chemistry with the receivers and getting in sync. So it's very important to continue that moving forward, as that will help continue to make this offense unlock and get better as the season goes on. So I have one more question for you, sir, before I let you go. So just let me know, what is your prediction for Sunday? And then give me one very extremely important key for the Falcons.
So my prediction as far as score goes is I have the Falcons at home in a non-nail biter, 27-17. I think it starts off kind of similar. It's close, neck and neck, and then the Falcons make those second half adjustments and pull away. The key matchup for me is the offensive line for us. Okay. If our defensive line doesn't come through like they can, because the matchup is favorable, right? We talked about that. The Seahawks right side is very weak, one of the worst in the league. But if we can't take advantage of it, the key matchup is our offensive line creating those running lanes and protecting Kirk. Because if Kirk gets protection, he will dice up any defense. I don't care if you have Reek Woolen out there, Devin Witherspoon out there, Julian. I don't care. He's going to find that soft spot and make things happen. So as long as our offensive line holds up, I think we're good to go.
Yeah, definitely. I'm in the same boat. I think we're going to win the game. I'm thinking 30-21 in this game. I think the offense will continue its string of 30-point games. I think we'll continue to score the ball. And I think our defense, like I said, even with the issues, we only let up 20 points last week. Panthers have been better with Andy Dalton, but not great. But, what you expect from a veteran quarterback, right? But, we'll have to continue to see how they continue to improve and progress as the season goes on. And winning that game is going to be big because, maybe we'll talk about this later, but the Tampa Bay game has me a bit nervous just because revenge game. You know how it goes, revenge game. Feel like you should have won, et cetera, et cetera.
And they're going to be healthier on the defensive side.
Exactly. So it'll be very important for us to win this game. But, Kevin, I appreciate you, man, coming on, talking some Falcons with me, man. Let people know where they can find you.
Well, Bryce, thank you so much for having me. I'm always open to talk ball, especially Falcons. But for those of you that know, I'm on Twitter daily tweeting, not just Falcons, but mainly Falcons, at BK2 on TikTok, at Dirty Bird Central, and same thing on YouTube at Dirty Bird Central. If you weren't aware, I do live react to the game. And yeah, you get to see me maybe not so optimistic at times. Let the emotions get the best of me. But for the most part, I'm the positive guy on the social media platforms.
Yes, sir. Hey, man, listen, I try to be on the more optimistic side too, for sure, man. It's easy emotionally. You've been like, oh, and after the game, like, all right, let's calm down, everybody, let's calm down. But yeah, man, so like I said, I appreciate you, man, definitely coming on, Brad, spreading your wisdom with me and people watching this video, for sure. And obviously, guys, y'all know where y'all can find me, Bryce_2K on Twitter, across all social media, YouTube as well, and everything like that. So obviously, we're going to be hoping for a victory on Sunday to get us 3 in a row and get us in very great vibes in Atlanta. But I'm Bryce. That's Kevin. See you next time.